The hope was that the Senate would be a moderating influence on the Republican tax and spending bill sent over by the House, but Senate Republicans are doubling down on cruelty instead. My name is Brittany Page, and this is the Page Perspective. The Republican tax and spending bill, which we've spent a decent amount of time talking about, is set to cause millions to lose access to healthcare and food assistance, and the massive giveaway to the wealthy at the detriment to the poor and working class may not be as sexy to talk about as like the recent stupid thing that Donald Trump said, but please stick with me here. A new Washington Post Ipsos poll found that 26% of Americans have heard nothing at all about the tax and spending bill. Republicans are counting on you not knowing what they plan to do, because if you don't know, you won't care to fight back and stop it. And we are still in this fight. Republicans know this is unpopular. They know that it's not popular to strip hardworking Americans of healthcare and food assistance, which is why they're trying to lie, hide, and cheat their way to enacting their legislation. We already talked about the number of Americans who haven't heard about the bill, but what about the ones who have? According to the Washington Post, quote, "Those who have heard a great deal or a good amount about it oppose it by a roughly 2-to-1 margin, 64% to 33%, with nearly half strongly in opposition." This means that by talking about this bill, speaking plainly about what it does, people are opposed to it and potentially activated to take action by calling or writing their elected officials. More on that later. Let's talk about the changes made to the bill. So it narrowly passed the House and made its way to the Senate, where again, there was some speculation that the Senate Republicans would make the bill more palatable. That did not happen. They are making it more cruel. Look at this statement from the president of the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities. Quote, "Senate Republican leaders' plan doubles down on disastrous House path. Higher costs for families, millions more uninsured people, and children without enough to eat." Quote, "It shocks the conscience that Senate Republican leaders saw the impacts of the House bill, 16 million more people uninsured and millions losing help buying groceries, including families with children, and chose to double down. Add in the president's tariffs, and this agenda would make all but the highest income, 20% of households, worse off. The health provisions in the Senate Republican leaders' plan are alarmingly even harsher and more damaging than the health provisions of the House Republican bill. Under both plans, tens of millions of people would face substantially higher healthcare costs, and millions would lose access to life-saving treatments, routine care, and medications they need. While the truth may cause some Republican supporters of the plan to bristle, it must be said, taking health coverage away from people will result in unnecessary deaths. And this really cannot be said enough. People need to realize that these are policy choices, and these policy choices are going to kill people. And as I talked about in my last video, Republicans have been using a lot of tactics to ensure that Americans are not in the know about the impact of this bill. The most common tactic being lie, lie, lie. In my last video, I talked about their lies about the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office, the CBO, where they keep saying the office is Democrat controlled, even though the CBO director is a Republican, and how they trot out this attack in response to the recent announcement from the CBO about the trillions that Republicans' tax and spending bill will add to the debt, or how millions of Americans will lose their health insurance. But there are numerous instances of these lies, particularly related to the fact that millions will lose their health insurance.
This is a very important distinction. Those 4.8 million people will not lose their Medicaid unless they choose to do so.
No one will lose coverage as a result of this bill.
Can you say for certain no one who is vulnerable in your state of South Carolina will lose his or her health insurance if this bill passes?
Well, let me just be very clear to my South Carolina residents. Thank God for allowing me to be your senator, but I can say this with great clarity. The one thing we know with great certainty is that the CBO has been wrong on tax cuts, and they consistently have been wrong, whether it's in 2017 or frankly the 1930s or the 1960s with the Kennedy tax cuts or the 1980s with the Reagan tax cuts or 2017.
But can you say for certain no one will lose their health insurance?
So this is really important, Pamela. Let me finish my thought here.
Waste, fraud, and abuse.
Can you guarantee that your voters who supported the election, particularly working class voters, will not lose health insurance under this bill?
Oh, they won't lose health insurance.
So they either lie or obfuscate because they know there will be political consequences for their unpopular policies. And let's make it really easy to understand, because we've also been talking about this bill as a wealth transfer from the poor to the wealthy. And this chart should make this clear. This chart is from recent reporting in the Washington Post from a fabulous reporter, Catherine Rampell. This chart is based on data from that same nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office we've been talking about. If we look on the left side of that graph, we're looking at just the income change based on the policies in the Republican tax and spending bill alone. And we see that the poorest 10% of households will be 4% poorer because of the bill, while the richest 10% of households will be 2.3% richer. Now, if we add to the Republican tax and spending bill Trump's tariffs, we see on the right side of the graph that the poorest 10% of households will be 6.6% poorer, while the richest 10% of households will be 1.5% richer. Nonpartisan CBO, director is a Republican. It's just the facts, everybody. So this is the plan, to shift the burden to the poor and working class in order to pay for tax cuts for the wealthy and corporations. It's widely unpopular with the general public, but only if they know about it. So that's where you come in. Share this video with someone who needs to hear the message. Don't let Republicans get away with lying or avoiding facing reality of what they are about to inflict on the American people. And most importantly, call your elected officials. 202-224-3121. Put this number in your phone. When you call, give your name, where you live. Tell your elected official you are a constituent and that you oppose the wealth transfer from the poor to the rich, that you oppose Medicaid cuts, that you oppose slashing SNAP benefits to pay for tax cuts for the wealthy, and that you expect them to work for you. If you're lucky enough to have a senator who is voting against this nonsense, make sure you call them too. Thank them. We need a reset here. We need to think about our elected officials in a different way. They work for you. They should know who you are and what you expect of them. Don't forget to tell them. What do you think? Call, leave me a fewer than 3-minute voicemail at 202-656-1509 or send an email to info@thepageperspective.com. You can support my work by becoming a channel member by clicking the join button below for as little as $1.99 a month or by going to patreon.com/IDoubtItPodcast. Tomorrow, we're launching a month-long fundraiser that I'm very excited about. So stay tuned for my video tomorrow for the announcement. And as always, thank you for being here. Take care, and I'll see you next time.